New episode of The Acolyte just dropped. Here's why it's quickly become so controversial. Bright Suns, everybody, Batuuboii here, and welcome to another review video for The Acolyte. This is for episode 3, titled Destiny. It has only been about 12 hours since it released, and it has quickly become a very controversial episode, and not necessarily for the quality of the show and for story elements, but just mainly for things that I will be discussing later on in the episode. The show has already been pretty controversial in its own right among the fan base, about the cast, the story, the elements that they choose to call certain things. I'm talking about Force Fu, and yes, I read my comments, and y'all are crazy, but not going too much into it. I honestly think it was a good episode. It was like what we continue to see in the first two. It feels very Star Wars. It's got charm. It's something original that the fan base has been asking for a very long time. It's a departure from the Skywalker saga. It's continuing that story, and it's outside of that, going into it, it's become this murder mystery that's very intriguing, and I want to know more about it, and in this episode we do learn more about it. But again, this is going to go into total spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, pause this video and go watch episode 3 of The Acolyte, and then come back here and get my thoughts on it. Alright, so episode 3 of The Acolyte. One thing that I say I was disappointed about was there was no 2-word title this week. We got 2 amazing titles with Lost/Found and then Revenge/Justice that fit perfectly into that dichotomy, with Osha and May being twins. They're both looking for either revenge or justice among each other. And this week, we just got Destiny, which, again, it still fits into the overall episode, so I wasn't too upset about it, but I was just hyped for what's going to be the next 2-word title, but here we are. So the plot opens up, and we are now 16 years in the past from the events of the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte, and we are on Brandok, which, as we know from the first 2, is the home planet of May and Osha. This is where they grew up. So as soon as I saw that title, I knew that we were going to be getting into some serious stuff, and that we were possibly going to be getting the whole reasoning behind May's plan and her wanting to kill these 4 specific Jedi that were stationed on Brandok. So we open up, we see young Osha sitting under a tree. She's holding a butterfly in her finger, and we kind of see like the butterfly flapping its wings and constricting. You would think at first that it's Osha using the Force to kind of like hold down this butterfly, which at first I was like, oh, we're going to be seeing these 2 become like evil baddies. I've seen theories online that they're both going to become Sith, and this kind of like was putting that little idea in my brain. But you cut to another shot, and you see May kind of holding her hands out, holding that butterfly on Osha's finger. And right after that, the butterfly flies off her finger, and she tries to squeeze the crap out of this thing. So right from the get-go, May is crazy. She's got serial killer tendencies, and it's very unnerving. Like, Osha's even telling her, please stop what you're doing, blah, 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 and May kind of just, like, throws it onto the wayside. They then begin talking about something that gets brought up a lot in this episode is doing things together versus doing things separately. Osha brings up not wanting to do something called the Ascension, which we learn later is a sort of rite of passage for the 2 of them. So they're walking back to their village, and all of a sudden we see this person who we learn later is named Mother Quarrel. We get a Dathomirian Zabrak. Same species as Darth Maul, but she's not red, but she's got the horns, she's got the face paint going on, so I'm gonna say it's the same species, and she looks incredible. The makeup and everything is top notch. Again, something that the Acolyte has been doing has been giving us a bunch of different alien species, and I am here for it. As soon as she came on screen, I screamed, because you hadn't really got a lot of that in live action since The Phantom Menace, so to see it here was amazing. And we see her just like yelling at the two sisters, being like, what are you guys doing? You know you're not supposed to be out here. We need to go back to the village. So they do. She kind of scolds them almost the whole way there. They get back to the village and it's poppin'. Again, all of these like city scenes and these, bizarre marketplace scenes in the Acolyte are filled to the brim with different species, different people. And this time we get a little bit less of that because they're more kind of human. We don't really see anyone younger than I'd say maybe their 30s or so. They're all pretty much adults there. And this is also where we are first introduced to Mother Anastasia, who was revealed in the trailers. We had already gotten a name, and once we figured out the last name for May and Osha, we could kind of put two and two together that this is their mother, which it is. She's very just oozes power and confidence. She is a very strong woman, and she's a great character. I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed her presence. She's very not coddling in the sense of she's overwhelming, but you can tell that there is just 100% love towards both of her children. She promises to get them ice cream after the ascension. The two girls run off, and this is where the episode gets a little bit controversial. In the first episode, they had mentioned about Osha and her mothers being killed. So these are her mothers. So Anastasia and Quarrel show that little bit of aspect to it. There's not anything really intimate. It's just kind of like a face touching, kind of caressing, but it was fine. I'm really proud of what Star Wars is doing and showing that inclusivity and really just going all out in it. Shout out to Leslie Headland. Everybody is freaking out. People need to chill out. Just the writing that Leslie Headland is incorporating here, these two different personalities trying to raise two children, it's just such a beautiful thing between them. So shout out to Leslie Headland, shout out to Star Wars, keep doing what you're doing. After that, we jump into kind of a training room. Mother Anastasia is teaching the both of them what they need to prepare for in terms of this ascension ceremony. And this is where we see her using the Force, but they don't call it the Force. She says the word. She says that some people might call this a Force. They don't really get too much into it, as we start to learn that the Ascension is pretty much a witch cult kind of coven type thing. They're space witches. It's a coven of all women. This whole time, May and Osha are kind of picking at each other. I literally have it on my notes that these kids are brats and are not listening. They're the two little sisters in class that are just picking at each other. Mother Anastasia realizes this, and she pretty much tries to force push both of her children. And May gets in front of Osha and sticks her hands back out at her mother, essentially just blocking her force push, which I was blown away. Mother Anastasia was already blowing people back with her force push. 1 people, 2 people. May was able to go and take that all by herself. So good for her. Something that gets repeated during the training is the power of one, the power of two, the power of many. So again, just that idea of that the coven is one entity and that they are all together in one, and that there's no sense of separation from your personal being and the needs of the coven itself. Which again, we got a little taste of that in Clone Wars with the Night Sisters and Dathomir, which I'm hoping that Morlock Quarrel is from, and kind of had that sort of influence there. So it's nice that we get this deeper dive into witchery and sorcery in the Star Wars universe, because again, the Force and the Jedi and the Sith, it's you've already implied they already know how to use this, but we only really think the Sith and the Jedi are the only ones that can do that. So it's nice to see another aspect of the Force being used outside of Jedi and Sith. So as they're prepping for it, Osha is apprehensive about wanting to go through with it. Like I mentioned earlier, she wants to start her own life. She wants to explore the galaxy. She kind of wants to just do her own thing. And May is not having it at all. I'd say she is like the most against it. She's always wanting to put the needs of the coven before anything else. She wants to be together with Osha forever. Mother Anastasia is kind of the same way, but we'll see what happens with that later. And something that we see after that is Mother Anastasia bringing up the fact that they were both bickering during the training, and Osha keeps bringing up her feelings about not wanting to do the ascension, and she makes the both of them hold hands and tell each other that they love each other, kind of bringing them back together. She mentions something about the Force being this thread that you cannot break, and that May and Osha are connected by this thread, that they're two very special children. And speaking of that, we cut to later that evening where the ascension ceremony is beginning, and this is where the music is kicking off. Shout out to Michael Abels, who is just giving that eerie feeling of being in a witch coven during a witch ceremony. There's this kind of like choral beat happening in the background that's just ominous, it's scary, it's being mouthed by the other ladies of the coven, and it's haunting. And we also get that choir singing the power of one, the power of two, the power of many, which again, having like lyrics like that included into a Star Wars score is terrifying, and I really enjoyed it. As they begin the ascension, Mother Anastasia goes into how they were exiled. Don't know where from, but they're essentially saying that we have been exiled, we are here to rise again and show everyone our true power through the miracle of life, which is May and Osha, as we start to kind of realize that, again, it's mentioned earlier that they are the only two children in this village, maybe on this planet, and that's why Osha thinks May is so attached to her, but May is like, we're both sisters, we need to stick together no matter what. Cutting back to the ceremony, they're both like dressed in these beautiful gold dresses coming up the stairs. May goes first, and something that I actually realized during the ascension ceremony was that there's two moons up in the sky that kind of look like the Acolyte logo. If you look at it, it's like an orange and like a light blue, and they kind of like come a little bit over, almost like an eclipse. And during that ceremony, both of those come together. And while the ascension ceremony is happening, Mother Anastasia collects the force or magic from the rest of the coven and pretty much concentrates it into both of her hands. She asks May if she is willing to do whatever it takes for the coven and is ready to receive her power. She says yes. She kind of just sticks her hands in May's face, and she now gets that little branding on her forehead that we also see Mother Anastasia has, but we saw that in the very first scene of the first episode of The Acolyte. So now she is branded with the power of the coven. So essentially she is now an official member of this coven, and it is now Osha's turn. She asks her, are you ready to receive the power of the coven? And she's kind of apprehensive about it, like she kind of says like, yes, question mark. And right before she gets branded, one of the witches comes in and says that there are Jedi that have come into the village, and the ceremony stops, they all go, and we see these Jedi, and who do we get in that village are our four Jedi buddies. We got Sol, we got Indara, we got Kelnaka, and we have Torben, who at this point is a Padawan. He's got his little Padawan rat tail, and Indara also introduces him as her Padawan, and they pretty much show up because they know that these two pretty much Force-sensitive children are here, and from what I'm guessing, the Jedi pretty much are just going across the galaxy and are enforcing this rule that if there are any Force-sensitive children, they need to be tested by the Jedi. How do they know that? In an earlier scene, when they were still in the forest after Mother Quarrel went and collected the twins, they're coming back and we kind of see Sol just hiding behind a tree, being a little sneak. And I'm guessing from that perspective, he went and told the Jedi and they showed up. So then Mother Anastasia's against this completely. This is where it hits the fan because Sol sees the children. He says, where's their father? And Mother Anastasia says, there is no father. So how did these kids come to be? It's mentioned earlier that Mother Quarrel carried the children and Mother Anastasia created the children, and Mother Quarrel pretty much threatens Mother Anastasia with well, what are you gonna do when the Jedi found out how they were created? I'm thinking this is how Anakin was made. Anakin had no father. Shmi confirmed that there was no father, that it was a miracle. She just bore this child. I'm very excited to see where this goes, and I want to learn more. Because, I mean, as you know, Anakin is my favorite character, so to see a deeper dive into how Anakin might have been born or created, I'm all for it, and I think it's really amazing. So going back to the Jedi, they seek out both children. It's at this point that Sol reaches for his lightsaber, which we hadn't seen him use it yet, so I was very excited to see him maybe at least just pull it out and ignite it. I just want to see Sol mess some things up. Indara says, no, what are you doing? He takes it out of the hilt and then presents it to Osha, kind of like just a gesture of peace. And right after that, we see Torben. His eyes go pitch black and he kind of falls to the ground. Pretty much Mother Anastasia uses him as leverage to leave the village. Indara threatens her back by saying, cannot deny the Jedi to test these children with their special gifts. Just let us test them. We won't be taking them away. Mother Anastasia stops possessing Padawan Torben. They kind of just go about their way. She agrees to let them get tested the next day at around midday, and the Jedi leave. So the next day, Mother Anastasia comes up with a plan with the two girls that during their tests, whatever they feel in their heart, they need to say the opposite so they can essentially cheat the Jedi test. Osha is against that. May is all for it. May does not want to be a part of the Jedi. She just wants to be a part of this coven forever and keep the family together. It's midday. They're heading to the Jedi's ship. Osha obviously is impressed by everything that she sees. She sees Kelnaka working on like a speeder bike and she's all for it. But before they enter the ship, May pulls Osha to the side and says, promise me that you are going to lie to the Jedi. Make that promise. Osha promises to her sister. She does try. May gets off the ship. She lied the whole time. She's not getting in the Jedi. Osha gets up there. And before I mention that, we see that they are using the exact same test that they used on Anakin, where it's like this little paddle with images on a screen, and they essentially have to say what the image is. At first, she says it's like a speeder or something, and it's a loft cat on the screen, and Sol says that that is correct. The next one, it's a spaceship or of some sort, and Osha says it's a mountain. Sol says, oh, that's correct, and she gets caught slipping when she says, wait, but that's not the real thing. Sol is a little trickster, and I know, I love him. I love Sol. I think he is one of the best parts of this show, and he's so loving in the most Jedi way possible. Because I know my gripe with the Jedi is that they cannot show emotion. They're kind of just like sticks in the mud. But, you know, Sol truly cares about like, what this child wants and what she wants to do for her destiny. Like the choices she wants to make to fulfill her dreams of leaving this planet and exploring the galaxy. He pretty much like goes and tells her, the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth. And no matter what comes out of it, just need to be yourself and be your own and try your best. So obviously he straight up asks her, what do you want in your life? And Osha says, I want to become a Jedi. And Sol smiles about that. They take the exam and she gets off the ship. We cut back to the training room that they were in earlier in the episode, and Osha pretty much tells her mom that she wants to become a Jedi. May is not about it. She's like, you broke your promise. This is awful, blah, blah, blah. Mother Quarrel has to take May out, and she's kicking and screaming the whole time. Like she's being a little brat. She's being crazy. It does not get better for May. But what I thought was really nice was Mother Anastasia, who up until this point was very against the Jedi, did not want this to be happening. It's just not about it at all. And we get to see that at the end of the day, yes, the girls may have been created in an unorthodox way, but she's still their mother. She still cares about what her children want, and she begins to see that this is something that Osha truly desires, and that she goes into, destiny is not mapped out for us. We're still able to make choices in our lives. And if this is something that you truly want in your life, then go for it. Which I thought was really nice, and it really develops that character, Mother Anastasia, who up until this point was just the leader of this witch cult and created these children out of unforeseen ways and was just pretty much evil. Like during the Ascension ceremony, I'm like, okay, like she's gonna be the bad guy. But it's at this moment that we get more depth into this character, and I really enjoyed that. So she agrees to let Osha go and be a Jedi. Osha starts packing up her stuff in her room, and in comes May, saying like, I'm not letting you leave, I won't let you. And Osha says, well, what are you gonna do? And May says, well, I'll just kill you then. Which I was like, okay, wait a minute, what is she gonna do? So we see Osha kind of like opening up this book. There's a Jedi logo that she drew into it, and May takes this book. She locks the door to Osha's room, and we see this scene of May picking up this lantern with fire in it. We cut back to Osha's room, and we just hear the lantern break, and the door starts catching on fire. She starts trying to escape. She like hot wires this like hole in the wall to get out of, and she's able to escape. She starts going through it, and everything around her is on fire. It's exploding. We start hearing the screams of the Coven mothers coming out, and it's popping off right now. We're in the thick of it. She gets to this area where there's this like giant beam, I don't know what to really describe it as. We saw it in an earlier scene that explodes. It breaks a bridge, and on the other side of the bridge we see May. Osha asks, what did you do? May replies back, what did you do? Kind of implying that she's trying to say that like maybe this was all her fault for, you know, bringing the Jedi in and for accepting the Jedi. And at this point, Sol comes in screaming for both of their names, so for Osha and for May, in the hopes that maybe he's trying to rescue both of them. The bridge starts collapsing. It gets to a point where they break. Both children fall down. Sol saves Osha. May falls down into this abyss, pretty much. So it's at this point, this is where they both saw May die. This is where, you know, they were headstrong and thinking that May's dead. There's no possible way that she could have survived that, because it was literally an abyss of just fire at the bottom. There was no way she was gonna survive that. Sol takes Osha, they start running away, and on their way to the ship, Osha sees her mom's dead body. She's trying to console, she's trying to grieve, but Sol is like, we need to get the heck out of here, let's go, go, go. And Osha passes out and cuts to black. We then see Osha on the Jedi ship, getting healed by the Jedi. She wakes up, asks, where are we? Sol says, you're on our ship and we're heading back to Coruscant. She wants to go back, she wants to save her family, she wants to do everything she can, and Sol says there's no time, there's no point, there's nothing for you there anymore, everyone's dead, we don't need to go back. It's at this point now that, like, you know, Sol says that, like, I want you to be my Padawan. Osha gives Sol a big hug, and he says this will never happen to you again. Sol is so loving. He is kind of like that Qui-Gon-esque. He's wanting to be this father figure to Osha, and it just wants to protect her. Like, he's hugging her and saying it's gonna be okay. Like, I've never heard a Jedi speak like that to anyone before, so I'm all for it. The episode ends. We're back on Brandok at the tree that we started the episode at. May is alive, clearly, and she's kind of just like whispering out for Osha, calling out to her, seeing where she is, and the episode just ends. So again, there was a lot to unpack in this episode. It answered a lot of questions that we had from the first two. Why these 4 Jedi? What happened on Brandok? What were her mothers like? Why are they Force sensitive? It answered a lot of those questions, but just gave us more because, again, I will say till this day, I really love Sol. But obviously there's something going on here. Why didn't we see May throw the lantern? I'm thinking maybe it was the Jedi that started the fire. Maybe it was Sol. Maybe it was Torben. It was somebody for sure. Nice that we're starting to get the bits and pieces here of this mystery, and we're already kind of piecing it together. I honestly think that the Jedi started the fire and that he blamed it on May because she was asking Osha, what did you do? You brought these Jedi in, and now they're pretty much destroying our way of life. They're destroying the Coven. It's just crazy. Now we just need to know who this dark side user is. is. Who is this master that May is following? That's what I'm here for. I want to see more of him. So hopefully we'll be getting more of that on Tuesday. Hoping we go back to that forced retreat that we saw Kelnaka on. Because again, I thought we were going to be getting more Kelnaka in this episode, but I'm happy with the episode we got. I'm happy with the new characters we met. The witch coven was crazy. It was really creepy, but really fun. The kids were kind of annoying, but mainly just May. Osha is just conflicted in her own right, but I was really happy with this episode. And again, I am here for the Acolyte, and I am here for the rest of it. If you haven't seen them, please go watch them. They are so good. It is a nice little murder mystery with Star Wars elements, and I want more of it. But until next time, thank you for watching. Comment what you thought of the episode. What did you think? What are your theories? What do you think is going to be happening next episode? And make sure to like and subscribe for more Star Wars content. But until then, till the spire, my friends.